So the main character of Hemlock and Silver is the toxicologist, and her name is Anja. She's a woman who, and this is set in sort of quasi-Renaissance times, and part of that is that I had just read a fascinating book about poisons, historical poisons, called The Royal Art of Poison, I think, that was a lot of just various individuals in history who died of something. Might have been poison, might have been food poisoning, might have been malaria, might have been what, and they would go through and be like, okay, this is, but since, they didn't have an advanced science of toxicology, they just assumed everything was poison, particularly if you were, a ruling individual. So, people are, it's like, no, he probably just had malaria. Or, no, this guy died of dropsy. And occasionally, oh, no, there was so much arsenic in him that, his hair was preserved for the next 1,000 years kind of thing. But just occasionally I will read a nonfiction book and be like, oh, this is amazing. I have to write a book that uses this idea.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to episode 168 of SFF Addicts. I'm your host, Adrian M. Gibson, and welcome to your weekly dive into the world of science fiction, fantasy, and writing craft. Joining me this week is my co-host, my bestie from Midwesty, the queen of my days, Greta Kelly. How are you, Greta?
I'm doing good. How are you, Adrian?
Doing very well, thank you. And if you want to support the queen of my days, you can buy her book, The Queen of Days. But you can also get The Seventh Queen, The Frozen Crown. Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, you got that huge ass poster.
I know.
I love it. So go support Greta, help her feed her children, make her life better.
That's right.
And enjoy a nice story.
And get your daily dose of murder, mayhem, and mushrooms by checking out Adrian's book, Mushroom Blues, available wherever you buy books now.
And if you want to support MJ in her quest to quit her day job and feed her cat, you can go buy her books, Among Thieves and Thick As Thieves, which are books 1 and 2 in the Tales of Tomorrow duology. So you get a complete story from start to finish. And you don't have to worry about, just all those fantasy books that are just in limbo these days. As well, a quick note for listeners, don't forget to support SFF Addicts on Patreon. If you want to join, you can get bonus episodes, author readings, and much more. So check the links in the description to help us do what we do here. Also, don't forget to rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to the FanFiAddict YouTube channel, where this and every other episode of the show is available in full video. And now, welcoming to SFF Addicts for the first time, Ursula Vernon, aka T. Kingfisher, talented author and an artist and a kick-ass person whose work spans many genres and mediums, including Nettle and Bone, What Moves the Dead, and so much more, including the newly released Hemlock and Silver, at least when this episode airs. Welcome, Ursula. How are you today?
Hey, thank you. Delighted to be here. And
It's
I'm
beautiful.
holding up the book.
She's got it.
It really is. The cover artist, Catherine Rozek, does amazing work.
It's a very beautiful.
I am thrilled to be here.
Very, very glad to have you here. Before we dig deeper into the episode, a quick word from our sponsor. Poe Targe's job was to stand at attention and look good in a uniform, unless someone earned themselves an ass-kicking. He spent years climbing the ranks to be a master sergeant in the Sorrento Royal Senate Guard, and now he has the top-tier gig. He's guardian to High Senator Sarah Brand, one of the leaders of the planet Sorrento. Life is going pretty good for Poe, and he's looking forward to a future of settling down and retiring from service. But all that changes when High Senator Brand receives troubling news. Shattered is the story of doing the right thing and the consequences of those actions, following Poe Targe, Sarah Brand, and their friends as they struggle to keep their planet safe. Shattered, a Sanguine Stars novella, is a short, action-packed science fantasy read that features political intrigue, fun action, and a touch of humor, all while setting the stage for everything to come in this universe. Visit nicholaswfuller.com to get your digital copy today. And now, enjoy the rest of this episode of SFF Addicts. So let's just start off with a bit more of an in-depth introduction for listeners who aren't familiar with you, your work. Can you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Let's see. I never know quite what to say at this point because the things that I think are interesting are often the things readers don't find interesting. As Ursula Vernon, I was a children's book author for many years. I did a series called Hamster Princess and a series called Dragon Breath. They were fun. If you happen to be under the age of 12, they're awesome. And all the rest is T. Kingfisher. I wrote mostly for adults. Some kid stuff kind of has crept in there now and again. I started out self-publishing them because I was... the joke is that inside every children's book author is a frustrated horror author. And all the things they tell you that you are not allowed to do in a children's book just kept like compressing tighter and tighter, and till finally one day I was like, I'm going to write a book for adults and I'm going to do everything and no one will stop me, and it's just going to be swearing and gore and arson. Arson was a big one, and which aggravated me because sometimes the solution to your problem really is burn down the haunted house. This is the absolute most logical thing to do, but you're really not allowed to do that in children's books. So anyone who has read my work may realize that on at least 2 occasions the solution has been burn the house down, and I regret nothing. Yes, and so that's basically me in a nutshell. I write fantasy, horror, fantasy romance, or romantasy, or whatever you want to call it. The name does not matter to me if it helps you find the book. And so, yeah, I dabble in a lot of genres, and once did an epic webcomic about a wombat. I think that's all the important stuff.
I love that you're able to let out your inner demons through horror.
Yeah.
It's weird. I've said this before, but talking to booksellers and whatnot, they will almost always say that horror authors are the most chill, laid back, nice people. And children's book authors, I mean, they will never say anything bad, but I've been to the conventions, like we all live on our nerves and are just, extremely tense. So yeah, it's there's something to be said about just anything that crosses the id can go on the page.
Yeah. Grimdark authors too are always like so
up.
Cheerful and like
yeah.
So it just must be something about getting the demons out.
Chaos.
Yeah, people every now and again talk to my husband and are like, aren't you a little worried that that's sleeping next to you? And he's like,
that.
If it's on the page, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Well, we have to ask you, like, what got you into horror and fantasy in the first place? Was it books or shows or movies? Like, was there any foundational pieces of media that you consumed as a child that really spawned your love of genre fiction?
It was absolutely Star Trek. I was young, and my parents were divorced, and one of the things that I knew about my dad was that like he liked Star Trek, and so I was like, I will watch this too, as sort of a way of connecting, and fell madly in love with it. And these were the days when the original series was all we had, and so I watched that. And then I found out there were Star Trek tie-in novels, so I had a whole bunch of those, and I also absolutely loved any book with talking animals in it. But once I had read The Chronicles of Narnia and Watership Down, I was basically through the entire talking animal section at the time, because this was, 1980 something. And I was like, I am going to have to write more books if I want more talking animal books. If I been born, in the last decade, when you have, warrior cats and the owl guardians and whatnot, and Redwall and everything, Redwall was older, but it didn't come over to the States as much. It is very likely that I would have gone into, I don't know, chartered accounting or something, because I had enough talking animal books. So.
Oh my God. Redwall was my jam. Well, I'm from Canada, so it's like that, that was the only people that I ever find who have also read Redwall is like people in the UK. So it's like Canada and the UK.
I think they were UK published, but they had no like distribution in the States until much later for whatever reason, and they were a lot of fun. I mean, they
Yeah.
got a little repetitive after about book 12, but
Right.
that's 12 books of mice fighting weasels.
Yeah, and when you're a kid, repetition doesn't mean shit.
Yeah,
You'll
you can
read,
do
Oh,
it
God, no.
watch to your heart's content.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm also an artist, and I wanted to kind of pick your brain about your journey as an artist, because I love that you have dabbled in all these different art forms. But I wanted to hear the story about how like studying anthropology was kind of your gateway into professional art, and if you found that there were some mediums that you fell in love with early on.
Well, my mother was a professional artist, a fine artist, still is, has an MFA. And so even though, I drew a lot as a kid and did a bunch of art stuff, I was always just like, whatever, there was no mystique to it. I really wanted to be a writer. And then I got to college and realized that, oh, there's no money in being a writer. And I was taking anthropology classes mostly because of a obsession with the Indiana Jones films and later with the Clan of the Cave Bear books. And I was like, anthropology, yeah, okay, that's great. And then realized that there was not a lot of money in that field either. And I was like, maybe I'll become an illustrator, because you could tell I made great life choices in college. And so there was a large stretch of my life where I was basically supporting myself by doing furry commissions. And I love the furries to pieces. I will hear no evil said of them. They buy a lot of art, they pay their artists, and they are like the safest conventions that you ever go to at all. So for years, that was basically what I was doing, was selling art of animals and wildlife art and stuff, and then doing a weird comic, and then got an agent because of the weird comic, sort of by accident, who was like, can you do a children's book, an illustrated children's book? And I was like, yeah, sure, that's probably a thing I can do. So that was kind of how it evolved. Most of my career has been made by not planning anything at any point, and just kind of not realizing what was impossible. So
Mhm. I
Yeah,
love
I was
that.
going
Just
to
kind of
ask,
stumbling into success.
like exploring different mediums. Did that just kind of come about organically, or is it something you actively searched out? It sounds like it just kind
uh,
of came up whenever it came up.
a lot of it was organic. I did a lot of digital art because I was in the very first generation where digital art was a thing. We had um, Deluxe Paint 3 on the Amiga, and like 5 of your listeners just went, oh my God, I remember that. And the rest are going, huh? But so I was used to doing digital art, and it was just sort of progressing. And I could draw with a mouse if I had to. And I went to college, and my mother had been, just take one art class, because I was still doing the I am not interested in art thing. She's like, just take one. So I took one, and it was really good. It was basically a speed run of all these different media. And so, it's like, all right, pastels and gesso and ink, and why don't we scratch into lithoplate and all kinds of things. And so that was a really great sort of way to get through a bunch of mediums. And then later on, whenever I would get bored with what I was doing, which is frequent because I have terrible ADHD, I would be like, I'm gonna go do something else, or something else would look interesting, and I would be like, maybe I'll go carve linoleum blocks for a bit. Or I usually wound up coming back to like either acrylic and colored pencil, or digital art, because that's what I'm really best at. But whenever things started to get stale, I could go to a different medium, and then there would be all the new challenges, and solving those problems would be interesting.
I feel exactly the same way. It's such a I don't know, it's such a thrill to be able to try something new. And it's like I had probably the most shocking for me was like experimenting with tattooing and being like, oh, this is
Oh,
really
wow.
interesting. And being like,
High
skin
stakes.
high stakes.
Yeah.
High stakes art. But it was like coming from the world of acrylic and oil painting and you know, just like pencil illustration, sketching and stuff like that. And then coming into tattooing, I was like, holy shit, this is really interesting. But there's kind of this beautiful moment where you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But at the same time, it's really exciting to jump into a new medium and figure out like, okay, how does this work? Like, how do I make this?
I would suggest not telling the person on the table that you have no idea what you're
but
doing.
that,
just
I did it on myself first.
Oh, okay, yeah. But no,
I've
said
very willing friends, like very comfortable friends. Being like, okay.
There you go. Yeah, I've said sometimes that a lot of times with art, you're sort of finding creative problems to solve. And if you don't have a creative problem to solve and you're stuck, a technical problem is almost as good. And if you don't know how to do the medium, you are solving technical problems, and that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And how did that kind of stretch over into writing? Because it's like you're working in comics and illustration, so many different forms of visual art, and writing is something that you wanted to do for such a long time. So how did all of those artistic mediums, visual mediums kind of affect and influence your writing?
Honestly, I wish this was a better answer, but the true answer is that I had done so many comics where, like, I would say, okay, the action takes place in a cathedral, and then I would sit there and have to draw the goddamn cathedral, that I was like, or I could just write the sentence, they went into the cathedral, and I'm done. Maybe throw in something about flying buttresses. All right, that took 5 minutes. I can knock off for lunch. Writing is just faster. So much faster, which sucks because I love comics. I love what comics, do as a medium. I love how much readers of comics will give you of themselves when reading, and the intensity that people will get involved in them. It's just there's so much work compared to writing a novel, having done both.
Are there any other storytelling parallels that you can kind of draw between them? Because it's like I have talked to comic writers and comic artists, and I find that a lot more of the people who are in the writing world tend to just do the writing on the comic side of things, but it's like you've done the art as well. So are there any kind of storytelling parallels that you can draw between them?
Comics are a lot of show don't tell by necessity. There's like a story that frequently when you work with writers, which I try never to do because writers are terrible, and I get to say that because I am one. You will get these descriptions of panels where the character looks wistful as if she is looking back on her life and whatnot. And someone famously, and of course I've forgotten who it was, basically came back in one of those and said, "Look, they can look mad, sad, happy, or startled. That's all you get. Pick one. I cannot do wistful gazing
Don't
at
give me fucking wistful."
Yeah, it's like only so many lines I can make around the eyes. So there's a lot of. I think probably as a result, I tend to describe people's expressions to convey emotion more than I, say she felt wistful, kind of thing. So I don't know if that's a result of that, but I could certainly see that, and that isn't something I've really thought about much before. But now I'll have to go through and stare at my books and go, "Am I doing the thing?"
Well, speaking of being wistful and looking back into your past, just touching on your anthropology studies briefly, did that field of study teach you anything about like just being humans and humanity in general, and how have you carried those lessons forward into your career as an author?
Well, there were basically two things, and one was abstract and one was very practical. And the abstract one was, to a certain extent, much like being exposed to different media, being exposed to different cultures and different foundation myths and things, because I wound up taking a lot of like folklore and mythology classes and whatnot. And like one of the very best classes I took was about indigenous Brazilian tribes. And this is not really a topic that you would necessarily think to recommend to up and coming writers, but it was fascinating. Just all of these groups, often in very close proximity with wildly different systems of everything. Faith and government and dealing with the afterlife and all kinds of things. And so it was really intense and amazing. And part of it was the professor was awesome. Sometimes you get those classes where it almost doesn't matter what the topic is. The professor is like, just sells you on it completely. I think he actually went on to head the Bureau of Indian Affairs in Brazil for a while. So he was an interesting person. But so that was fascinating, and just like almost the speed run of cultures in the world. And because of the way college is broken up, you'd be studying Catholic nuns for an hour, and then you'd go off to Native American religious traditions, and then you'd be off to learning about the Tapirape or something, and then over to the class on African American religious studies. And it was just amazing, all of these different elements and some of which are very similar because people fundamentally mostly want the same things, but just the wild diversity of workarounds for the world and the environment and other people that people come up with was amazing. The practical one was that I took a class, which frankly I hated, which was called ethnographic interviewing, where you had to interview people, record it, go and transcribe it, which is ungodly tedious. And it also teaches you an unbelievable amount about how people actually talk and the amount of filters that our brains put in between how words come out of people's mouths and how they get into our brain. And if you tried to write dialogue like people actually talk, it would be absolutely unreadable, and your readers would throw the book out because it's agonizing. Like, we start a sentence, we stop a sentence, we meander, we stop, we repeat the intro of the sentence like 5 times, going, the thing, the one place with the thing, and yeah. And if you can write dialogue that sounds like it comes into your ears, or like the way it comes in past the filters, which a lot of times was basically what you were trying to condense these horrible, transcriptions into, it comes out feeling very much more natural and more interesting. And so I have been told my dialogue is good, so I attribute it all to that one class, which I was agony.
You hated it, but
It's
it
always
gave you
the
something.
painfuls.
Yeah, it gave you something useful. That's
it did, yeah. And they had these weird ass machines to do it that were not. It was like slide projectors in the 80s or something. The technology was probably state of the art at the time they bought it, but by the time I had it in 1997, it was yeah. Anyway,
and now all this like speech to text AI and all this shit, everyone's got.
Oh yeah. I'm sure that class is wildly different now, which I am torn between you should suffer as I suffered, and oh god, no one should suffer as I suffered. So
the dilemma of aging.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to kind of touch on because you're talking about speech and how people speak, and as a parent, and Greta's a mom as well, like talking to kids. I want to kind of touch on writing kids books again. Talking to kids, you really have to kind of not necessarily dumb yourself down, but you do have to put yourself in a different headspace of like how to describe things, how people speak, how to convey information. So when you're writing kids books, how did you approach the
UPS guy has come to kill us all?
How did you approach just like the sheer task of trying to speak to children as opposed to like us right now talking to each other as adults?
I tried not to panic. I would the big thing is just that you just don't have as long to dick around. And it's like when I have two stepsons, and at first when I would try to explain why, okay, we need to do this because you need to make sure that there's no food in your room because otherwise there will be ants and then it will be terrible. And my husband would look at me and would just be like, go get all the food out of your rooms and throw it away. He's like, don't try to explain it. You don't need to go through the whole, explanation and whatnot, because they will have forgotten what you were talking about by the end of the sentence. Just say what you want done. And I'm like, okay. So, and the thing is, kids are very, very intelligent. So it is certainly, it is definitely not dumbing down, because I feel like if people consciously try to dumb down books, kids like recognize that immediately, and kids are so sensitive to being condescended to. Like, I would vow lifelong hatred to any adult who talked down to me when I was 10. I still have not read Jane Eyre because my mother was condescending about asking me to read it. I vowed I never would, and yes, so
that is the hill you will die on.
That is the hill I will die on. So part of it is just having to be fast. You have to start the book fast. You cannot, spend 3 paragraphs describing the setting unless you're doing it in a really fascinating way. You have to. You can't noodle around with the plot for 50,000 words trying to figure out where it's going. And I say that with love as someone who does that routinely in adult books. You just have to be like there and get moving and say what you mean. And clearly, so a lot of it is just clarity, and you don't have to necessarily belabor the point all that much. Like, maybe repeat once just as a reminder, but don't keep hammering on about something that the kid's like, yes, we know already, get on with the fighting. So other than that, it's not all that different from writing for adults. I only have like one authorial voice, so writing for kids for me was just sort of like the Reader's Digest condensed version of writing for adults, except again, swearing, arson, and gore. Yeah, and which is funny because there were so many things that I would write that I would remember being a kid and be like, but kids will love this, and my editor would be like, yes, they will. But their parents and their grandparents buy the books, and they don't want to think that their beloved child is, wants the Splatterfest. So, yeah. And
Ursula
let's
Vernon
face
just
it, like,
tainting a whole generation of children.
Also, I mean, and I don't know about you guys, but how many science fiction writers do you know whose origin story was, I read Stephen King way too young?
Yeah,
all of us.
Like three-quarters
I read
of
or watched X thing way too young.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I probably Clan of the Cave Bear I should not have picked up at 10, but it had Neanderthals, which I thought was interesting. And yeah.
Well, I love that. Like books in general, but especially for children. I mean, it's just so essential to the human experience. And I'd love to hear, as someone who writes both in children's and adults, like, what do you have to say when you're at that dinner party with someone who has a hot take about how children's literature isn't real literature? Just burn them.
They also say that about sci-fi and fantasy too.
First, something I should have clarified before we started. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Course. I've sworn already. And you're
all right, then mostly what I just say is, oh, fuck off. People don't say this to my face at dinner parties because when they start down that road, I usually just go, I'm a children's book author, and wait. And hi, Kat. Yes, I am a children's book author. Hello. And it's a rare person who can keep like plowing forward to explain why your genre isn't real when you're just going, But for anyone listening at home, that was the pleasant, direct look and which is very similar to the, all right, how much rope are you going to take to hang yourself, friend? So yeah, that's the thing. If I am not allowed to be there in person and shame them, is just I encourage you to try to write one, which is often what I say about everyone likes to slag on romance. Romance gets no respect. I'm like, have you tried writing one? Also, a lot of times, when was the last time you read one? Was it in the last 20 years? Kind of thing. But people think things are easy because they don't necessarily respect it. And I have found that if they have to go and do it themselves, they realize, oh my God, this is incredibly brutal, or that was easy, and why is no one buying it and everyone ignoring it? You see some of it with the people who are like, I'm going to get rich having AI write children's books for me, and attempts were made early on, and it was like, oh honey, first of all, even leaving aside every other topic, let's have a chat about discoverability in children's books being school libraries and bookstores, and how just putting it up on an Amazon page is not actually going to lead you to fame and fortune, and then we can get to the rest. But it's people think it must be easy and that kids must be stupid, and it's like, no, kids are very clear-eyed about things that adults have forgotten sometimes. But at the same time, as I think you said earlier, kids love repetition. Like if a kid reads a book they like, they want 50 more that are just like it. And I did that too. God knows. Most of us, I think, went through a phase where we would watch the same movie over and over and over again.
I still do that with TV shows.
Frequently, yeah. It's like, I think it's getting time for a rewatch of, fill in the blank. But I watched, I think, Lady and the Tramp, An American Tale, and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom were all on the same VHS, and I would watch all three of them more or less daily, which in retrospect may have warped me a little bit. But anyway.
It makes sense. I can see it now.
That combo is phenomenal. It's just like, yo, I got my burned VHS. I got these three hot...
Dude, it must have taken you so long to rewind that VHS tape.
Oh my God.
That's
oh God, yeah.
That is
yeah. It might have been one of the double-sided ones where you could like watch the
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I don't think it was. I think that was the cassette thing. Yeah, I have no idea. I think I would just set it to rewind and then wander off. But
3 hours later.
Yeah.
More than 3 hours.
Right?
Like Indiana Jones alone is like at least an hour and 45. So.
Yeah. And that was certainly the worst of the three movies, and today, has infinitely wrong with it that I can all see. But at the time, I wanted to be Indiana Jones, and they went to cool places. And I still think we need the movie that is short round, grown up, repatriating all of the artifacts that Indiana Jones stole, doing like reverse heists around the world.
That would be amazing. And the actor who played Short Round has had like a bit of a comeback in the last few years.
Exactly.
Well, so.
Yeah.
It's perfect time for it.
He can absolutely do it. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, we touched on it at the very beginning when you were talking about the desires that you had within you to burn shit and put gore and swearing into your books and all that. I love the fact that you're able to explore so many different genres, because a lot of authors tend to find their niche and stick to it because they find success there, because they find an audience there. But you've dabbled in so many different genres, so many different age groups and whatnot. So what appeals to you about that kind of experimentation? And if you have any advice for authors out there who are afraid to dip their toes into a new genre.
To be honest, it was another one of those accidental things, and I'm sure my agent would prefer it if I picked a genre and committed. But part of it again comes back to the ADHD and being bored, and I'm like, oh, I could try this. But I went into horror specifically because I had started writing for adults, and I would write all of these things often with the gore and the dark stuff, and people would be like, okay, this is a fantasy novel, but this is some horror stuff going on here. Are you aware this is horrific? And I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought about it. I am, my brain may be a little warped in places. I would just do things that felt logical, and the next logical thing, and the next logical thing. And then my editor would be like, oh, sweet Jesus. So one day I was like, what would happen if I sat down and tried to write a horror novel instead of just having weird things happen in the middle of, a fantasy novel? And so I tried to write a horror novel, and it was set in contemporary North Carolina. And that was the Twisted Ones, and which was a great title. And then after everything was set and all the marketing material had been done, Five Nights at Freddy's came out with a tie-in called The Twisted Ones. So I still am a little bitter about that. But anyway, it was fun. It was like, horror. All right, let's do horror things. Let's and I really do not have a good have any background in horror, because like when I brought home the Stephen King book, my mom made me take it back to the library. She was going through a very evangelical phase, so we did not watch horror movies or anything like that. So and then later as an adult, I read I binged read most of Stephen King and was like, okay, that was fun. What else is like Stephen King? I'm going to try Clive Barker. Okay, nope, we're done here. And maybe shouldn't have started with a Magica. That's a very, very long book. Amazing little set pieces, and then just the rest of the book around it. So I think to a certain extent, I was coming at horror entirely fresh, because I did not have I did not know what I was supposed to be writing. I had sort of a mental image of how horror novels probably go, and my basic unit of horror is a woman alone in the house with her probably dog, possibly cat, and something terrible is happening outside the window. And you can actually get a lot of mileage out of that after a point. So I wrote one, and then I was like, that was fun. Let me do, and it was also, the first one was halfway through turned into sort of a pulp pastiche of Arthur Mason's The White People, because I was like, I should learn about horror if I'm writing. I will start by reading foundational texts of horror. And I already read Lovecraft, who I think was sort of more like a foundational text of science fiction almost, but that's another argument. And so I started reading Arthur Machen and Algernon Blackwood and whatnot. I don't know why it didn't occur to me to get something in the last century, but I wanted to go back to basics, and so much of the pulp was terrible. I mean, it's pulp. It was never meant to be enduring literature, but every now and again I would trip over one that actually scared me, and I would wind up sort of pastiching it into a book. The one was The White People. The Hollow Places is based on The Willows by Blackwood, which is a brilliant, still bit of really creepy ass, not eldritch horror. What's the name of the horror where the weird things come in from outside? Thank you, cosmic horror. That's it. I was drawing a blank. Yeah, it's great. And so it was often I would just read I would go on to Project Gutenberg and read 20 or something, read an entire anthology, and one would stick with me, and I would be like, there's something here, and I want to pick at it, and maybe get find some chunk of a book in it. And mostly it's something that scared me. I will now confess that occasionally it was, this is a great premise, and oh my God, you fucked it up. So I'm going to take it and fix it now that it is out of copyright.
I'm going to make this better. I'm going to write this the way I want to write it. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of taking old stories and making them new again, let's talk about Hemlock and Silver. Let's shift gears a little bit into your new book. For anyone in the audience who may not have heard about it yet, I'm sure there are four of them. Can you give us the elevator pitch for the book?
Yes, this is Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. It's sort of a retelling of Snow White, but I realized rapidly that Snow White was frankly the least interesting character in the story, and that the cool meaty stuff was in the creepy things in the mirror and the poison. And I sort of went in with, well, what if, if we're dealing with poisons, uh, what if someone knows that Snow White is being poisoned and tries to fix it? And you go back to the fairy tale, and this is not plausible, because it's always like one bite of the apple and she falls down dead or something, or it's a poisoned hairpin and then somebody has to pull it out. But I was thinking, forget this whole Prince Charming thing. What if somebody has to show up and figure out what the toxicology is and deal with that? And it was also because the magic mirror was such an interesting sort of figure, and I have always found mirrors kind of creepy. Like I'm okay during the day. At night, I just don't want to look in them, because I'm like, what if there is something there? And if I see it, then it'll know I've seen it, and then we'll have to have a confrontation. Whereas if I just ignore the mirror, everybody's fine.
Same. In our house,
Yeah.
I have a 5-year-old, and we cover her mirror because too many nights she's woken up, seen herself, we hope, in the mirror and freaked out. So we just keep it
if
covered.
horror's taught us anything, is that mirrors are bad news.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know what it is. Like, the world seems to be divided in some ways between people who find mirrors kind of creepy at night, and then people who are like, what the hell are you talking about? And my husband is one of the what the hell are you talking about? And I'm like, but what if there's like things in there? And he's like, and you think about this every night. I'm like,
it's my Roman
I'm
Empire, babe.
Yeah. I just don't look in the mirror, and it's fine. And oh God, if most of humanity is like you, we are woefully unprepared for an invasion from the mirror people. And yeah,
God forbid if there's like an alien race of mirrors. Fuck that.
Doctor Who, are you listening?
Right. Actually, China Mieville did a really great novella called The Tane that is about things in mirrors. That was definitely some of an inspiration in Hemlock and Silver, but
definitely
it's really good. But anyway, yes. So the main character of Hemlock and Silver is the toxicologist, and her name is Anja. She's a woman and this is set in sort of quasi-Renaissance times, and part of that is that I had just read a fascinating book about poisons, historical poisons, called The Royal Art of Poison, I think, that was a lot of just various individuals in history who died of something. Might have been poison, might have been food poisoning, might have been malaria, might have been what, and they would go through and be like, okay, but since, they didn't have an advanced science of toxicology, they just assumed everything was poison, particularly if you were, a ruling individual. So, people are it's like, no, he probably just had malaria. Or, no, this guy died of dropsy. And occasionally, oh, no, there was so much arsenic in him that, his hair was preserved for the next 1,000 years, kind of thing. But just occasionally I will read a nonfiction book and be like, oh, this is amazing. I have to write a book that uses this idea. And unfortunately, I've also read a very interesting one about sewers, and one of these days I will write a fantasy romance that is all about sewer design. I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, we'll see about the marketability of sewers compared to poison, but
yeah,
you can make it work. If anyone can make sewers work,
do it, I believe
it's you. We believe in you.
Thank you.
But I love how your obsession with poisons just kind of came into this character of Anja, and the fact that it's like, yes, this is a reimagining of Snow White, but it's kind of like, yeah, well, fuck Snow White. She's boring, whatever. And Anja became the main character, the point of view character. So why, from your perspective, was she like the ideal POV character, and how does she contrast Snow White and kind of like the Snow White story, which is something that we're all super, super familiar with at this point, especially like growing up watching
Oh
Disney and
yeah.
all that stuff.
Well, Snow White has no agency at all at any point in the story. Like, it's the only thing that she has is basically actually running, and that's usually because the huntsman is like, "Will you get the hell out of here?" Nothing. She is might as well be the rug in the Big Lebowski. She ties the room together, kind of thing. And
That's a good reference.
Deep cut.
Well done.
I'm old. So yes, to a certain extent, in Hemlock and Silver, the character of Snow ties the room together, but ties the book together at least. But and she, by making her a kid, I think she's like 10 or 12. It's more understandable that she has very little agency and is being acted upon. In an adult, it would get galling to write as a viewpoint character, because I would just be like, "Will you do something?" And I wrote a Snow White retelling ages ago that was a novella called Boar and Apples, where I replaced the dwarves with talking truffle pigs. It was actually a very fun little story, but in this one, I needed a character that had agency, and I wanted a character who was sort of a scientist, because I hadn't really written I've always wanted to write a scientist viewpoint character, but the one horror novel I had where she was a herpetologist wound up in limbo, and it was going to be so cool. She was going to find frogs with external gills, and there are no frog species with external gills. So therefore, discovering that would mean that she had found the portal to the other world, which happened to have, among other things, frogs with external gills. Anyway, I just wanted to bring the kind of, because I know a lot of scientists, and I love them all to pieces. I have a book coming out next year called Wolfworm that's a horror novel where the heroine is a scientific illustrator. And it's about bugs, and it's actually extremely gross, and I'm very proud of it. But anyway, this book, I just wanted someone who, could use the scientific method basically in a fantasy novel, and who was observant about very specific things that I am frequently observant about, but that other people aren't. Like, I have set a firm rule that most characters in my books do not know different tree species apart down to the species level, and I have got to stop pretending that they do, kind of thing. You cannot make everyone a gardener. So things like that. And also she's very nerdy and has a tendency to lecture at the drop of a hat about things, about horrible animal facts, like if you get stung by this centipede, or there's a species of rockfish in this place that if you step on one, you will wish the sharks had eaten you, kind of thing. And I am also a font of horrible animal facts. So,
we all hate small talk. Whatever gets you through the small talk.
Right. And yeah, so
no,
that was how I got there.
Yeah, I loved Anja. She's such a fun character.
Yeah.
I mean, she's so fascinating. She's a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways. Like, she wasn't like a 19-year-old ingenue, like ready to head off with the sword, like we see all the time. But she's also just unapologetically uninterested in motherhood in a way that you don't often see in stories, but also like in this day and age, almost feels radical in a very liberating way. So did like the current political climate, the state of the world, kind of affect the way that you created Anja when you were writing her?
Not in that sense, because the roots of that go back a ways. I love my stepsons, but they were already housebroken by the time I got to them, so I had no interest whatsoever in having my own. So even though I write romance novels, I have a couple of series of fantasy romances, they are not the kind that ends with everybody has kids, and in at least one of them, the heroine is like we can't do anything because I might get pregnant and I cannot deal with that. I everybody keeps dying in childbirth. I am tired of it. Also, there were 5 kids in my family. Cannot cope, that kind of thing. And I love romance as a genre. I read a lot of Regency. I am a huge champion of it. The everybody ends up having kids thing I can really do without. So I just set out basically to be like, I am going to have heroines who are older, fatter, and not having kids. And the system's worked so far.
I love that mantra, just older, fatter, and no kids. Make it work. Well, you've also got another book coming out. I mean, it's a ways out from when we're recording, but by the time this episode releases, it'll be out in about a month in September. And that is What Stalks the Deep, which is the 3rd installment in the Sworn Soldiers series, which I really love. Like, I adore Edgar Allan Poe. And so What Moves the Dead was actually, as like a fungi lover and everything as well, was the first book of yours that I came across, and I was like, oh shit, this is my jam. Let's go with this.
I'm glad that was the first one you found, because that was basically like, let me tailor make a book specifically for you.
Yeah, no, that's what it felt like. It was like horror, Edgar Allan Poe, mushrooms. Yes, please, on every account. But I really enjoy the series. But if you could tell listeners a little bit about what is coming for Alex Easton in book 3.
Oh yeah. Well, What Stalks the Deep is Alex Easton lives in Europe and occasionally gets to say sarcastic things about Americans, which I enjoy writing to no end. I'm like, haha, I can say anything I want about Americans, haha, because I am one. But yes, it's really fun to make fun of yourself sometimes. And in this book, they wind up having to go to America because their old friend from What Moves the Dead, Dr. Denton, is like, something horrible is happening here, and I need someone who understands that weird ass shit goes down and won't say like, this is impossible, while it's eating their face off. So could you come over? Here are two boat tickets. And it is set mostly in a coal mine in West Virginia, and in areas that I have visited, and I had to, writing the historical fiction. This one is set in 1890 something. I'm a little vague on the exact something. I keep having up doing so much research on these, because I'll be like halfway through a sentence and be like, wait a minute, when was canning invented? Like with tin cans. Oh, Napoleon. Okay, but they didn't have can openers until when? Having to stop and be like, would they be using toothpaste or when was the toothpaste tube invented? Things like that. This one, I read a lot about coal mining in the 1800s, and just, should the issue ever arise, never ever be a coal miner in the 1800s. There are so many ways to die, just unbelievable numbers of ways to die, like actually in the mine. If you get out of the mine, it's pretty much black lung, but while you're in the mine, like, anything can happen. There are like so many different kinds of mine gas. And I wound up on a website that was basically from a place that sold ventilation systems for mines, and had these lovely listings of all of the gases you had to worry about, and whether they were poisonous, explosive, or both. And it was like, yes, you can have fire damp, it's explosive and poisonous. Okay, and black damp, which is actually carbon dioxide, it'll just poison you, it won't explode, and so on and so forth. Read some interesting, thin little, one of those local history sort of books that was called Mine Disasters of North Carolina. And it was about like a mine or two that, exploded, fell down, sank into the dark tarn. And it was, I'm like, this is amazing. this is handy. This is horrible. My God.
And then you just went and added
So
supernatural horror to the
Yeah.
mix. As if it was
exactly, yeah. And although the funny thing is that for most of the book, the supernatural horror is actually fairly tame. Is like I sort of set out. I wanted to do something that, without too much spoilers, I was like, Lovecraft did Shoggoths. How would I do Shoggoths? And it kind of went from there. But the mine is actually way worse than pretty much anything in it for 90% of the book. So
the mine
Isn't
is
the
the real
reality
horror.
always?
yeah, and I've actually been in a mine long ago in my misspent youth when it was midnight. There was nothing to do in town. Somebody said, let's go up to the old mine, which sounds like the beginning of either a Hardy Boys novel or and then, half the bodies were never recovered. But we drove up some mountain roads in Ashland, Oregon to a mine that had been boarded up at some point, but forget that. What does no trespassing really mean? And went inside it, and it's really dark. That's about all I have. You're inside a mine. Wow, that is darkness on a very elemental scale. And that was probably an incredibly stupid thing to do now that I think about it. But
we all learn from the stupid shit that we do.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, Gen X, we had to make our own fun in those days. We didn't have the internet. I also discovered horrifyingly that there are tons and tons of abandoned mine shafts that are not listed anywhere. And one thing the federal government is trying to do, assuming they still have the money to do it now, it's probably been canceled, was just trying to map all of the abandoned mine shafts that are just lying around that people could fall into.
Oh, wow.
And they estimate there's like thousands that just...
Good Lord.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, that'll keep you up at night.
Yeah.
Next time you go on a hike, especially in like the East Coast of the United States.
Yeah, I'm just thinking Appalachia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like,
oh, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
It's all the old Lassie things about, oh no, Timmy fell into a hole and said Lassie. They were probably all abandoned mine shafts.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
They're not wells. We all knew where the wells were. It's just abandoned mine shafts.
Yeah.
Well, I did actually. There was an abandoned well on a property that I knew of, but it was only about this big, and Timmy would have had to work really hard to fall down that, as opposed to
in order to get down.
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to falling into mine shafts, which were sometimes huge. So.
Well, I'm very excited.
This has been Mine Shaft Safety.
Mine Shaft 101. I'm very excited for this, though. Yeah, the more you know. Oh my God.
And knowing is half the battle.
But I love this series, so I'm very, very excited I'm very excited to see how you incorporated mine shafts into book 3. It's going to be a wonderful experience. But just in general, like I love your work and it's been wonderful chatting with you. So just to close out, I want to ask you a 2-parter for listeners and viewers, if you could give them a good bit of soundbite writing advice. And then I know out of anyone we've ever talked to that you will indeed have a weird or random fact that you find to be utterly fascinating.
Okay. Writing advice. Actually, I am stealing this one from Billy Collins, the poet laureate, who said that don't worry about being good, write the thing that only you can write. And that sounds very sort of twee, but then I read Chuck Wendig's Black River Orchard, which is entirely about heirloom apples. Chuck is obsessed with heirloom apples, has been for years, is always posting about them. And I was like, this was the book that only he could have written. And this is perfect. This is exactly the encapsulation of this. So, write the book that is all your weird obsessions and things, and the rest will come out in the wash.
Beautiful. From heirloom apples to mine shafts, whatever tickles your fancy.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Ursula, give us a weird or random fact to close this out.
Skunk cabbage is one of the a number of plants, but it's the one in North America that generates its own heat. It will melt the snow around it. It is a plant that metabolizes more like a mammal in some regards, and it does this so that there can still be snow on the ground and it's warm around it, and it starts growing, and then once it gets warm enough that there are bugs moving around because the air over it is warmer, the smell goes farther, and it stinks to heaven, which is why it's called skunk cabbage, and it attracts flies that pollinate it that come for the weird smell. Some other plants like that are basically all smell horrible, like the ones that smell like carrion or whatever, and it's often to attract insects that will pollinate it like that.
Yeah.
But the fact it can melt snow is just
That's
awesome.
crazy.
Plants
That's badass.
shouldn't do that. That's weird. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. There was skunk cabbage in like a swamp near my grandma's house when I was growing up. And my brother and I always used to love like traversing it as if we were fucking jungle explorers or something. And it smelled like ass.
Yeah, I know.
Some Jurassic
Oh
Park
yeah,
shit
yeah,
right
no.
there.
Yeah.
It is a weird plant. Also
So
has surprisingly pretty flowers in some regards. But,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just this bizarre, dinosaur thing that stinks.
Smells
Awesome.
awful. Yeah. That was a great fact. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for chatting with Greta and I today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And just to wind down, if you could let everyone know where they can find you online.
Yes, if you want a list of the books and links and things like that, redwombatstudio.com is where I have all that, although honestly, tkingfisher.com should get you there too. And if you want to see me go nuts about the fact that, for example, I just found out today there are prairie dogs next to my post office, go to Blue Sky, where I am T. Kingfisher. And it was great.
That's
they're
amazing.
Sitting up little heads.
Adorable.
Yeah.
Prairie dogs are so cute.
They carry the Black Plague.
I love how macabre you made that. They're so cute. They carry death.
They'll adorably kill you.
I'm just saying don't pet them because of the plague, but we can fix that with antibiotics now. It's fine.
We're fine now. We're fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
And you can also follow SFF Addicts across the board at SFF Addicts Pod. You can follow me at Adrian M. Gibson. If you want some weird fungal shit in your life, you can go check out Mushroom Blues, my debut novel. Greta, what about you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Greta K. Kelly. And of course, you can get my latest book, The Queen of Days, wherever you buy books. If you're ever wondered what it would be like if your D&D party decided to fight a fallen god and rolled natural ones on all their checks.
And you can also support MJ. Go check out Among Thieves. Support the Thorin Food Fund. Thorin's her cat, and he's more fur than fat, so feed him. That's how we do it. All right. Well, that's it for this episode. Stay tuned next week for part 2 with Ursula for our writing masterclass on Fairy Tale Reimaginings. Until then, keep reading, keep imagining, and we'll see you next time on SFF Addicts.